If you grew up outside of America, you've already seen this. If you grew up in Latin America, if you grew up in Turkey, if you grew up in the region, if you grew up in the Middle East, if you grew up outside of the West, okay, this is not even remotely unique. What's unique is America doing it, and an American president doing it, and also doing it in broad daylight, with the media basically just kind of being in alignment. It's pretty funny. This is how it always goes.
It was an air escort fit for a king. Saudi fighter jets flanking Air Force One on the president's approach into a place where he feels comfortable. If the Saudi-US relationship has had its ebbs, well, it feels now like it's flowing. Down to the tie with the carpet, there is a match between this president and the crown prince here to...
Purple carpet is significant because it's the royal color, and they even gave him the highest honor that the kingdom can offer to anyone.
...greet him. Just as he did in his last term, Donald Trump has chosen Saudi Arabia again for his first major foreign trip. Now, though, they are two leaders more confident, more powerful, more self-assured, and they see opportunities and money. This was the full Saudi welcome from a country transformed so fast, where change that took Western nations centuries has happened here in one generation.
You got a 21-gun salute and shit. Like, they got a mobile McDonald's for them in Riyadh. They brought in a mobile McDonald's truck. Bloody killers, all of them. No, nothing I said is a joke. It sounds like a joke, but it's not.
Trump the president was here, but so too was Trump the businessman. In a gilded palace, and with America's most successful CEOs with him, he must have felt quite at home. The so-called tech bros had traveled thousands of miles to be here. The richest man in the world, Elon Musk, and the man shaping AI, Sam Altman, among a long list of founders and CEOs from some of the world's biggest companies here for investment. Because symbiosis is what all this is about. It's about what America can offer Saudi Arabia, but now more than ever, it's about what the Saudis can do for America. And so the signing ceremony was the first order of the day, and the jewel in the crown, a $600 billion strategic economic partnership deal with the Saudis, including the largest defense sales agreement in history, we're told. This is, of course, a relationship that stretches back many, many decades through consecutive presidencies and one royal family.
I'm not going to say what America deserved, but like the way that the media is presenting all of this as though like Trump is a great negotiator and he's bringing all these countries to heel. I don't know if they're wish casting or I don't know what's going on, but I do not see Israel's actions in the backdrop of all of this in any way, shape, or form conciliatory to the very reasonable demands being made by Hamas. And I don't hear a lot of criticism from at least Saudi leadership about said actions. As I've told you before, MBS does not give a about the Palestinians. He actually sees the Palestinians as a nuisance, getting in the way of his deals that he wants to make openly with Israel.
But it feels now to be more important and with more opportunity than ever before. The president got the trip down memory lane as he arrived at the investment forum. Inside, the soundtrack was his, playing now in Riyadh, and with a smattering of MAGA hats. The American cabinet, the Saudi royal court, and the billionaires' front row.
You achieved a modern miracle, the Arabian way. That's a good way.
For his speech of the day.
And it's
if you know anything about the background of Howard Lutnick, you know that if you know anything about 9/11, or specifically about Howard Nutlick, the people in that room have direct involvement with virtually every single person that he knows dying on 9/11, including his brother. Ever the great deal maker, Howard actually found a way to capitalize on the death and destruction that the company that he was a part of, the company that he actually had seized control of, experienced, including his brother dying, and made a lot of money off of suing the airlines for allowing 9/11 to happen. He then took away a big chunk of the trial awards away from people in his company that needed it, and the family members that needed it. A real freak through and through.
Court and the billionaire.
That's a good way.
For his speech of the day.
And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western intervention, giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves.
Well, that was a pretty remarkable speech, despite the tariffs and the upending of the world order that we've seen over the past few months. The message there was that America is open for business, politically, economically, ready to build bridges, put differences to one side, and work with all countries in this region, even Yemen, Syria, and Iran. A key headline was Syria. He said he's scrapping sanctions against the country, now free from Assad. It comes as the White House revealed that he is due to meet Syria's new president, once a jihadi fighting the Americans. They'll meet in the day ahead. It might confuse some people. When he's doing his speeches in America, it's all about America first. We don't really care about the rest of the world, seems to be the vibe. And then here, it was a wholly different message, I felt.
I think there's a misperception. I think the truth is that he obviously cares about peace around the world, and he spent his entire 4 or 5 months of his administration sending his emissaries around the world to create peace deals, right?
We're strategic partners. They need us and we need them. I mean, that's just the way the ball rolls.
The evening was the state banquet. The morning will bring the diplomacy. He'll meet key Arab leaders before travelling on to Qatar, where they will surely try to outdo the spectacle today. Mark Stone, Sky News.
Yes, the mayor of Miami was there.
The latest now on President Trump arriving in Qatar this morning, the second stop of his 4-day trip to the Middle East, where he's mixing diplomacy with business deals. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce traveling with the president. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Georgia. President Trump now on the second leg of his visit here in the Middle East, here in Doha. But before leaving Saudi Arabia early this morning, the president having an historic visit with the new president of Syria, the first by an American president in more than 2 decades. This morning, President Trump touching down in Qatar. Trump kicking off the second leg of his 3-country tour to the Middle East after visiting Saudi Arabia. Trump this morning marking a major shift in U.S. policy towards Syria, meeting new Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa alongside Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, with President Erdogan of Turkey joining by phone.
With the support of leaders in this room, and the great leaders you are, we are currently exploring normalizing relations with Syria's new government.
The face-to-face coming just hours after Trump announced he would lift sanctions on Syria, now that the Assad regime has crumbled.
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
It's a move, Trump says, came at the request of the Saudi Crown Prince.
Oh, what I do for the Crown Prince.
The first major foreign trip of Trump's second term focused on strengthening business ties with the Middle East. Joining him, leaders of some of the world's most powerful companies, from IBM to Google and Uber, and of course, Elon Musk. The president now touting a $600 billion investment in the U.S. from the Saudis, though details are sparse. The Saudis giving Trump the royal treatment. The Crown Prince rolling out the lavender carpet. Trump piling on the praise.
I like him a lot. I like him too much. That's why we give so much, Too much. I like you too much.
The president describing a transactional approach to foreign relations based on making deals regardless of past history. From embracing the Saudi Crown Prince years after U.S. intelligence concluded he orchestrated the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, to forging ties with Russia's Vladimir Putin.
In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins.
But hanging over the visit, serious questions about Trump's own business interests. His sons, who now run the Trump Organization, have projects in the works in all 3 countries he's visiting.
Bro, he's not old and fulfilling his fantasies. He's just becoming a Turkish-style dictator. I don't think people understand. Everything he's doing for pure profit is people that are outside of America. If you grew up outside of America, you've already seen this. If you grew up in Latin America, if you grew up in Turkey, if you grew up in the region, if you grew up in the Middle East, if you grew up outside of the West, okay, this is not even remotely unique. What's unique is America doing it, and an American president doing it, and also doing it in broad daylight, with the media basically just kind of being in alignment. It's pretty funny. This is how it always goes. Person comes into power, uses the way to the office to generate tremendous amounts of wealth for himself and his family and his friends. And that's it.
Coming soon.
Trump now in Qatar, which he once called a funder of terrorism. But now he's poised to accept that extraordinary gift from the royal family, that $400 million luxury jet known as a flying palace, to be used as Air Force One before being transferred to his presidential library. The proposed deal raising serious questions about what it will cost American taxpayers to retrofit the jet to modify its security, and whether the gift violates the Constitution's ban on gifts from foreign heads of state. Trump overnight defending that proposed gift, saying the current Air Force One is less than impressive.
Some people say, oh, you shouldn't accept gifts for the country. My attitude is, why wouldn't I accept the gift?
But even members of his own party aren't sold.
I also think that the plane poses significant espionage and surveillance problems. So we'll see how this issue plays out. But I certainly have concerns.
And the president is kicking off his time here in Doha with a formal state visit, including a lavish state dinner tonight. He's also expected to speak to U.S. service members here in Qatar. George.
Mary, also news this morning that a company with ties to the Chinese government is investing several $100 million in one of the Trump family's crypto businesses.
Yeah, George, that's exactly right. GD Culture.
They're so funny. Remember, every time they say, wow, I can't believe that they accepted money from Qatar, they just mean like only Israel and Israel's allies in the region get to do that. Which, by the way, Qatar is also a part of the allegiance. They're just more neutral than the Saudis are, partially because of Al Jazeera. Qatar gave Erdogan a jet. Okay, dude, that's nothing. Qatar giving Erdogan gifts is meaningless. Qatar is basically like a holdover state in and of itself with a tremendous amount of wealth for Turkey.
Culture Group, a small technology company with ties to China that operates on TikTok, announcing plans to purchase up to 300 million of the Trump Bitcoin. They are just the latest business with foreign ties to jump into the president's cryptocurrency business. And all of this is coming as the president is working on a deal to allow TikTok to continue operating in the U.S. Ethics experts are sounding the alarm about conflicts of interest, but the White House insists the president is following the law.
Yeah,
George.
we've never seen a mix of personal finance and diplomacy like we're seeing on this trip and in the early months of this presidency. Mary Bruce, thanks very much.
To believe this man was once an Al-Qaeda militant with a $10 million US bounty on his head. But the man who became Syria's leader after the ouster of the dictator Bashir al-Assad is now shaking hands like old friends with Donald Trump.
How did you find the Syrian president?
Great. Great. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy. You know.
It was the first time in 25 years that the leaders of Syria and the US had met, and they did so at the behest of the Saudi crown prince, who'd persuaded Trump to break with US policy and lift America's crippling sanctions on Syria. Cue elation on the ground in Damascus, where the lives of ordinary Syrians have been shattered by years of civil war and American sanctions that have choked its economy for more than 4 decades.
This is a second happiness and a second liberation. The sanctions will be lifted, which means a revival is coming. No more economic crisis.
I do need to mention something. I think taking the sanctions off of Syria is good. Although I don't believe that Jelani is a good dude, and I don't believe that he has honest intentions of uplifting Syria, and I do think that he is simply a person that will allow the partitioning of different parts of Syria. North Syria goes to Turkey, South Syria goes to Israel, and a person that will maintain all the smoke for other ethnic minorities, but also simultaneously ensure that Syria never falls into the sphere of Iranian influence ever again, so that it can be used as a placeholder or a part of the supply chain for Hezbollah in Lebanon. And ultimately, I don't have a lot of good opinions about him. I still think that it is good to take off the sanctions from Syria because it's ridiculous to starve this country. It has played a horrible role in ruining the material conditions of regular Syrians at the end of the day, regardless of what their background may be. It is collective punishment.
Then it was on to Qatar, another Middle Eastern state dripping with oil and riches, and today a caravan of camels, a place that Trump 2.0 can't help but be drawn to. But it hasn't always been that way.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. We have to stop the funding of terrorism.
And yet here he was, sitting side by side with Qatar's leader, making nice.
But we've been friends for a long time, and this is an outstanding man.
But the
Bro, you are so fake, Trump. You fake piece of shit. You fake, phony piece of shit. Oh, we've been friends for a very long time. I loved when they were, what, funding terror by your own estimation? That's crazy.
meeting was less about foreign policy and more about business deals, as Trump announced Qatar would buy $200 billion worth of Boeing planes, though the White House said it was half that amount.
It's the largest order of jets in the history of Boeing. That's pretty good.
But there was only one jumbo jet story in town, the gifting of a $400 million luxury plane from Qatar that Trump insists he'd be a fool not to accept. They didn't mention that, but back home in D.C., Democrats and even some Republicans warn the gift will compromise national security.
And I hope there are some serious people within the administration who take our national security seriously who will tell Trump he can't do this. But it's outrageous.
I don't know that we can have an honest appraisal of their human rights record and decisions on arms sales if we're receiving $400 million gifts from a country, so I'm not for it.
But Trump just can't.
I like that when Israel says jump, our politicians say how high. By the end of this Middle Eastern tour, I feel like they're going to be like Qatar did October 7. Like, we must nuke Qatar. We must nuke Doha immediately. They were directly responsible. They did October 7. They were there. The royals were there. I saw them. They were beheading babies and throwing them in ovens.
Resist. How could he? Not when they're rolling out the full pomp of a state banquet in his honor. What's the harm of a palatial jumbo jet between friends?
Yeah, 100 mil from Miriam Adelson is not bribery. That's something different. 400 million from the Qatars in the form of a jumbo jet. That, on the other hand, that's the highest form of bribery. It's like, it's all bribery, dumbass. The f are you talking about?
Where's the plane? And they are having difficulty. I'm not happy with Boeing, but we're going to work on Boeing. And Boeing's got some unbelievable people working for it, so I'm not going to do anything bad to Boeing. But they had a strong contract. I wrote the contract. It was a guaranteed price contract. And if I wanted to, I could, hurt Boeing, and I don't want to hurt Boeing. But they are very...
No, one's lobbying is different. It's not even... By the way, the funniest part about this, the funniest part about this is that Israel doesn't even get hit with a foreign agent registration. So it calculates totally differently. Its lobbying efforts are seen as domestic lobbying effort. That's the other part of this. That's why they can always get away with saying, like, well, Qatar is actually the largest funder of our universities or whatever. It's like, yeah, dude, because when Israeli aligned interest groups are also funding a ton of initiatives in this country, it's not seen as a foreign entity doing the influence peddling. It's seen as a domestic effort to do influence peddling. That's it. That's the real secret there, for the record. And so much so that if you actually even dare to question this, people can just be like, wow, anti-Semitism much? I can't believe it. How dare you say Chuck Schumer, who has spoken at every AIPAC conference and has said things such as, obviously Judea and Samaria belongs to Israel, and these the enemies of Israel just simply don't want to understand the truth that was written in the Bible, that this nation belongs to Jews from 3,000 years ago. When he says stuff like that, no one turns around and goes, what are you, a mullah, but like a Jewish? Like, what's happening here? Like, this is we only are tuned into a certain frequency where it's like, if I hear a guy with a big beard and a turban on his head saying stuff like that in Arabic or in Farsi, only then can I recognize how insane of a statement that is. God forbid you point to that and go, what the is this? What are you? Are you a registered foreign agent? Why are you doing this? Everyone goes, wow, look how unimaginably anti-Semitic you are. I see why people take special notice of this bribe, though, because Israeli influence is a lot more institutional and official. No, the reason why people are taking special notice of this bribe and not the bribes of, I don't know, building a Trump Tower in Damascus or any number of different moments where Saudi Arabia has straight up pumped billions of dollars to Jared Kushner and Donald Trump. The reason why those things, while they still get a little bit of media coverage, are usually in the backdrop is because these countries, as they stand currently, are not a threat to Israel. Okay, that's why, because these countries are a part of the Abraham Accords. These countries actually want to normalize relations with Israel. And the very moment that you say, okay, I'm normalizing relations with Israel, Israel can do no wrong, then it's over. It's not a problem anymore. Qatar, on the other hand, which also wants to collaborate with Israel, obviously, as a regional actor, is still somewhat neutral to the Palestinians. Remember, I'm not saying they're pro-Palestine. I'm not saying that they care about the safety and security of Palestinians at all, but they're neutral. And that is the reason why everyone freaks out about Qatar doing this. Okay? It's the same reason as to why people freak out about Turkey and Israel being at odds in Syria. If you recall, right before Benjamin Netanyahu came to Washington, D.C., there was already like some conflict brewing in Syria because they had already partitioned Syria, and Erdogan had some different initiatives for Syria than Israel had for Syria. They had different designs for it, even though both of these parties, while still have like regional, they have some semblance of autonomy and have their own regional interests. Both of these parties are still operating at the behest of U.S. empire, okay? So when that happens, then obviously people start talking about, whoa, wait a minute, like you got to dial this back a little bit. Israel literally bombed a airport that had Turkish engineers in it in Syria. It became a major problem. Then they quickly wrapped it up and we're like, all right, it's fine. And once America got the Kurdish militias to stand down, okay, once again, the ever-present pro-Kurdish in the United States of America, once again wrote them off, okay, and is trying to find a way to basically bring the Kurdish militias under the banner of HTS or the current Syrian government in a way that doesn't like offend Turkey's interest in the region, because their grand design revolves around just eliminating the threat of Syria being a logistical hub for Hezbollah between Iran and Hezbollah. Once they're done with that threat, it's over. It's no longer a problem. You can partition the country whichever way you want to other regional actors because nobody gives a shit about Syrian people. Once that took place, and Israel couldn't use Kurds as a ethnic group that they could sometimes launch against Turks if they felt the need to do so, they started talking about the Druze population. So now the point of contention in Syria is over the Druze population. That's what Israel is using.
Late with the plane, and Qatar heard about it, and he's a great leader. And we were talking, and he said, if I can help you, let me do that. And they had a plane, not a new plane at all, but they had a plane. And you know, these planes, the plane that you're on right now is almost 40 years old. And when you land and you see Saudi Arabia and you see UAE and you see Qatar and you see all these, and they have these brand new Boeing 747s mostly, and you see ours next to it, this is like a totally different plane. It's much smaller, it's much less impressive as it is. And, you know, we're the United States of America. I believe that we should have the most.
Your assessment is very true. Israel loved Kurds because we were useful to them for a while. Now they're using the Druze the same way. Shaking my head. Yes. Hijri, a Druze Syrian sheikh, is pro-Israel and calls for Israeli intervention in Syria. Anyone in the region that is pro-Israel or pro-America is, I mean, that's what it is. They are pro-Israel and pro-America. They are begging to be a outward asset for imperial endeavors. That kind of attitude will inevitably create a incredibly, oftentimes fundamentalist reaction. But of course, that doesn't matter. That's a problem for the next decade or so.
Most impressive plane. So anyway, so they said to me, we would like to, in effect, we would like to make a gift. You've done so many things, and we'd like to make a gift to the Defense Department, which is where it's going. And I said, well, that's nice. Now, some people say, oh, you shouldn't accept gifts for the country. My attitude is, why wouldn't I accept a gift? We're giving to everybody else. Why wouldn't I accept a gift? Because it's going to be a couple of years, I think, before the Boeings are finished. And they'll be wonderful when they're finished, but that's a long time.
Isn't part of your argument how the United States has paid untold billions and trillions of dollars?
I didn't even realize Hannity was there.
Securing every aspect of the world?
Well, I said that. I said, you know, we've secured that part of the world for many years. So if somebody makes a gift, then I'm not getting, I get nothing. I get to fly it like any other president would. Ultimately, it'll be at the end of its lifetime or at the end of the term, because we're going to have the other ones in by that time.
So the U.S. is
It'll
kind
be
of giving them
decommissioned.
gifts. It's called national defense.
Yeah.
And
No, well,
security.
we give a lot of gifts. We give too many gifts, to be honest with you. We give gifts to defend countries that wouldn't even exist. Many countries wouldn't even exist. All over the world, countries wouldn't even exist. But I thought it was a beautiful gesture. Now, there are those that say we shouldn't be accepting gifts to the Defense Department. And I would say only a stupid person would say that. Why wouldn't we do that? And so it helps us out because we'll have a relatively new plane instead of having 40-year-old planes. These planes are 40 years old, and that's not representative of our country.
Let me go to the other side, and that's the national security equation. And I know every one of these countries that we will be stopping at here and we'll be reporting on this show, every one of them is worried about one country, and that is Iran. #1 state sponsor of terror. And obviously the Iranians, you've been very, very clear. They can't get a nuke.
Right.
They can't enrich. According to published reports, they could be 3 to 6 months away from being a nuclear power.
There won't be a nuclear power. Let me just explain. I'm all for Iran. I want them to have a wonderful country and make a lot of money. They have great oil reserves. But if you remember, when I was president, Iran was broke because I placed secondary sanctions, meaning you couldn't buy, if you bought oil, you couldn't deal with the United States. And people make a lot of money dealing with the United States. So basically, they weren't selling any oil to almost anybody. It was down to a trickle, almost nothing. And by the time it all came about after a couple of years.
Isn't the Air Force One has 40-year-old parts? No, he's not wrong. Yes, a lot of planes are old. A lot of planes that you actually fly in are old, and their parts are old too. Some of their parts are. He just doesn't, I don't think he likes the aesthetic of Air Force One. That's what it is. That's simply all this is.
They were essentially, they had no money. And they didn't have money for Hamas. They didn't have money for Hezbollah. They didn't have any money at all. And we had no threat. And when Biden came in, he took off the sanctions and he let them get very rich. And now they have $350 billion or more, which is a tremendous amount. They made great wealth. With oil, you make great money quick, great money, great wealth quickly. And they have tremendous oil and tremendous reserves.
By the way, nothing that Trump is doing in the region is America first. And ironically, it's Trump first. Okay. It's Trump first and Trump's family and friends first, which is what makes this situation really hilarious, because for a lot of Trump morons, like a lot of MAGA supporters, they literally just think Trump is America and America is Trump. So when Trump does stuff that's like very openly self-serving, they go, hell yeah, brother, that's America first, baby. That's it. That's the whole point here. The entire point here is Trump first, America first. That's what this is. Because they're peasants? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.